Great. And today you got a lot of things to go over, so let's just jump right in. First thing I want to talk about is a little perspective, as they call it, from the Mooch, from Anthony Scaramucci, and then we'll take a look at finite versus scarce markets, and of course, watch the tops as we take a look at some interesting indicators. Also, we'll take a look at what's World Mobile, and we'll take a look at actually what it is, what's new, what are the challenges. And then we're going to bring in Micky Watkins, the CEO, and we did an interview already, and he tells us exactly what World Mobile is going to do and the difficulties that they are faced with right now. But I got to tell you, it's looking very promising. And then we talk about the interaction with Mark Cuban, and then it's a little update. And then after that, we'll do a little Q&A. So before we get into it, welcome back, everybody. I know I've been on a little hiatus lately. Health hasn't been the best, but I think I figured it out. It's going to take a little bit of time for me to get back up to speed, but doing pretty good. So I want to start with today with, there was a snippet, a segment with Anthony Scaramucci, and he was on MSNBC or CNBC, and he talks about what he's doing with his clients and how he sees things. And it was 5 minutes. I'm going to chop it down to one. And it makes a lot of sense. I just want you to listen to this before we get into some other stuff. So let me bring this up, mute myself.
When this stuff happens, I just want to remind people there are only 21 million Bitcoins out there, and you'll have a demand shock with very little supply.
So Anthony, for Ethereum specifically, it sounds like long-term you're a believer, but short-term there is a trade that will likely happen. Is the coin fund trading around that at all?
Actually, no, we're long it. I'm trying to condition clients to just stay in there. There's no reason for us to create that friction. I think you and I know, Melissa, and I've seen you talk about this on Fast Money. If you're out of the market for the 10 best days, you've reduced your return from like a 7.5% return to a 2% return. That's the overall stock market. And so I don't want to start herking and jerking the portfolio based on emotion. Again, we're up 45% since we last spoke. We did nothing but hold the positions and stick to our discipline. I think that's the message I'm trying to send to investors. See through this. There's a lot of short-term people. There's a lot of research departments in different wirehouses that have knee-jerk reactions to things, and they get overly emotional. We're trying to tell people, just relax, see through this. We see a pretty optimistic scenario for Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and Algorand over the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, so I couldn't say any better. I mean, look, 45% just doing absolutely nothing, just sitting around. And of course, there's always going to be the traders out there that are like, well, you know, you could make a lot of money right now by selling and then getting back in and jumping around and doing all those things. Well, you can do that, and that's great. I mean, if you really want to do those types of things. But for me, I don't really want to sit around and look at charts all day and then hopefully, and then capital gains tax and all those things. It just gets a little bit confusing. And I want to remind everybody of this, which is, this was a tweet I put out, gosh, January 7, 2021. I said, fun facts, in 2009, if you invested 99 cents into gold, you'd have $2 today. That's pretty good. You doubled your money in, gosh, 11 years. If you invested 1 cent into Bitcoin, you would have over $37,000. That's the difference between scarce and finite supply. I know there's always going to be people who are calling for, well, Bitcoin's going to zero. Well, they've been calling for that for since inception, and we're still doing pretty good. So just remember that sometimes it's just a good idea, just take a step back, just take a look at a little bit of the fundamentals and go, what do I invest into? And how long am I going to be here? How long is my time horizon? For me personally, I've got a plan, but that plan doesn't really go into effect for 3, 5, and 10 years. So let's jump in real quick and take a look at the markets today. Markets are boring, I'll be honest with you. Bitcoin is pretty much stagnant. Ethereum stagnant, down a little bit. Cardano's up 3%. All right, 13.4 for the week. Dogecoin up 10% for some reason. Shiba Inu 35, great. Whatever. And that's what's going on in the market. And then what I want to do as a segment is I did a video. This is my plan. The plan is, I've been around since 2017. The plan was to, in the bull run in 2021, my idea was to get out almost 80%. And I didn't. I got out probably like 50%. But I left a lot of money on the table. And I want to see if there's some better way I could do it. And I talked about, there's a couple of different cycle top callers, and also cycle bottom callers. This is on my website. Dan teaches crypto, 100% free, will always be free. And we go over these 7 indicators. And somebody said to me, they go, Rob, that's a great video, but who cares? Because I'm not going to remember it as time goes on. I go, yeah, that's a good point. So what I'm going to do is every video or so, I'm just going to bring out one of those indicators. And just as a reminder, these indicators are 100% free. They're over at lookintobitcoin.com, and they are free. It looks like they're always going to be free. And it's actually a pretty good service considering all the fact of the different prices out there. And then this was created by Philip Swift. I actually reached out to the team over at Looking at Bitcoin, and we're going to get together on the channel and talk about how these things came together. But anyhow, Pi cycle top indicator, just so you know, when the 111-day moving average crosses over the 350-day moving average, that's a indicator of a top. We talk about this extensively in this video, but just so you know, we are not near the top. We are far away. That's all you got to know. And then for the net unrealized profit and loss, you can see here, I like these indicators because looking at Bitcoin is very simple. Like green is a good time to buy, and like red is a good time to sell. I like colors. I'm not smart. I like the very simple. And I'm like, oh, okay. So down here around June 13th or so, pretty good idea to buy into it. Actually, let me blow this up so you can see it. And of course, we are not anywhere near the top, just so you know. So those are 2 indicators that signify we're not near the top, which I think everybody knows about. All right. So that's the market itself. Let's jump into what's World Mobile and a quick disclaimer. So look at these 2 kids right here. This is me and Micky Watkins, our first video, our first deep dive. When we talked about what World Mobile is. And World Mobile, there's a link in the description, both their websites. This is World Mobile, this is World Mobile Token. And essentially what it is they're using these things called aerostats. Just think of those as blimps, really. And that is for the line of sight, for the telecommunications. They're giving these solar panels and mesh networks to the people, and it's all based on the Cardano network and how it all puts together. There's an actual working product in a couple of different villages, and they're looking to scale. They just haven't scaled right now. So the thing I want to do is I want to bring Micky in and talk to us about, first of all, he can explain, he's the CEO, and talk to us about what it exactly is, what the problems are. And then, of course, there was a nice little interaction between him and Mark Cuban. So I'm going to let him talk to you about that. And this interview is about 23 minutes or so long. So I'll be here afterwards, and we'll talk about, do a little Q&A. But just as a disclaimer is this: I am super biased. You have to understand that. So the things I talk about on my channel, I've invested into on this channel. I don't usually talk about things I don't invest into. So when I'm talking about something, I almost always have skin in the game. So this should come as no surprise that I want this project to succeed. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility that if somebody invests into something, they want it to succeed. And that's why I'm talking to you about it, because I think it's going to do pretty well. But those are just my thoughts. This is not investment advice whatsoever. I'm not a financial advisor. Just something to give you a little information. So without further ado, let's jump into Micky and me in the interview. So as promised, I want to bring Micky Watkins back, because it's been a year since we last talked, just to talk about, first of all, so he can put it in his own words about what World Mobile Token is and what's going on that's new, and then what are the challenges for adoption. And then I just want to talk to him about this interaction with Mark Cuban. So Micky Watkins, thanks for coming back.
How you doing, man? All good?
I'm doing good. I could not believe it was a year ago since we did that interview. It's been like it's not been that long, but it has.
We've talked a few times since then, but yeah, we haven't been on for a year, and we loved that first interview, and I hope that everybody's going to love this interview as well. Yeah, and I was supposed to meet up with you at Consensus, and I planned it pretty poorly, so we'll get together at some point. Anyhow, let's talk about this. Let's break into it. I kind of went over like what World Mobile is, just sporadically before we talked, but I want it to come from you. Like, what is the elevator pitch? What is World Mobile, and what's new? I know it's a loaded question, but tell us what it is. We're a global mobile network built on blockchain. We use ground assets and aerial assets, so balloons in the sky, things called aerostats.
I like
to
that.
propagate huge amounts of signal across huge areas of land for the unconnected. So there's 3 billion people unconnected on the planet right now, and we have a solution to fix them. Partially is a technology solution, and the other part is a business solution, a sharing economy.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, right? So you guys are using balloons in the sky, aerostats. They don't need to be charged. They're
charged solar at the bottom or powered feed. These balloons are attached, so they're tethered to the ground. They sit at 300 meters to 1,000 meters, and they have a custom payload on the bottom of these balloons as well. My providers and production team are going to go mad about me calling them balloons. They are aerostats, just for the team out there. But the easiest way to explain it is the balloon hoists up with helium a payload. That payload has 4G, 3G, 2G, 5G, as well as IoT, LoRa, and Sigfox, as well as AIS for anywhere coastal to be able to track ships and marine life and fishing. So these aerostats are able to not make a smart village or a smart town or a smart city, but several of them make a smart country.
Yeah, and I think what's cool is that, so they go up, what, 1,000 feet?
Yeah.
For
anywhere between 300, you're American, I'm English, but
I know it.
So anywhere between 300 meters to 1,000 meters, and we're also playing at 20,000 meters. But this technology isn't ready for 2-3 years. But eventually, it will start at 20,000 meters and then cascade down to reaching points of 1,000 meters, 300 meters, with an entire of the balloons meshed in order to provide signal and send data around the network.
Yeah, and then so like if they're up 1,000 feet, they have a line of sight. What are you talking about? Like 60 kilometers, somewhere around there. So it can kind of put that signal all the way out.
Well, when you're facing down low, you can only see really what's in front of you. When you're facing up high at 300 meters, you can actually see all the way into the horizon. So we've managed to get 70 kilometers, 75 kilometers at 300 meters. But if you're talking about 20,000 meters stratosphere, you're now talking about 700 kilometers. But of course, you need a ladder, essentially, built up of balloons in order to be able to propagate the signals through there. But the line of sight is phenomenal compared to traditional telecom infrastructure and towers.
I got to tell you, it's a pretty genius idea, because to build those towers, I mean, we're talking millions and time and lots of time. But we could just use these aerostats, put them up there, pretty self-sufficient. Even if there's wind, there's some kind of like hurricane gust forces, you can just bring them down, and that's it.
130 kilometers to 160 kilometers an hour they can survive, and most places don't have that unless there's a hurricane or tornado. If there is, we auto detect that. The balloon drops down, it sits there until the tornado's gone, and then all of a sudden it goes back up. And when you talk about legacy infrastructure, towers, and what they cost, the thing about a tower is you can't move it. So the thing about an aerostat is you can literally bring it down, pack it up into a trailer, and drive it off into a car park with a high building, or over to the side of the mountain, or anywhere you want within just several hours.
See, and this is the thing. This is what I think about is, you're trying to bring telecommunications to people that don't have it. So it'd be so super expensive to do that. Why would you even do it? Well, you can do it this way. And if we're talking about the people who don't have these telecommunications or the ability to do these things, and you said 3 billion people throughout the world?
I'm quoting the ITU, who say sure. 3 billion people. But from our research, and we have a large research team, I would say that up to 5 billion people on the planet have very, very poor internet, actually non-functional internet. But 3 billion is still a big enough number for World Mobile.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Puerto Rico? Awful internet. Sorry, Puerto Ricans, it's true. It's awful internet. So you have something like that makes sense. So that's on the top. Bring us down to the ground level. How does that all work? Because there's a great little video that you have on your website. I'm gonna link this down in the description. And it's all about solar panels, putting those up, making those mesh networks, and then using everything built on Cardano. Walk us through that real quick.
So this pole that you see here is an air node. On the bottom of that air node is second life batteries, and then the solar panels on the roof of that building there, they power this entire unit. People then can plug via USB or plug into the device itself and charge their phones. They have a transponder receiver that then picks up signal and talks to the balloons, as well as coming in fiber where we possibly can. In the continent of Africa, actually, it's nearly always pegged by fiber. because there's phenomenal fiber. Within 1 or 2 days, I can get someone out or our team out to plug into a fiber connection. So the balloons are fantastic for providing huge amounts of coverage to make sure that we have ubiquitous coverage in zones. The problem with mesh networks is that when you go from one Wi-Fi point to another Wi-Fi point, you lose signal in between those 2 points. So our network is hybrid. The balloons provide the huge amount of coverage for critical data for browsing, and the base stations on the ground do all of the offloading for the balloon. So we have line of sight coming from the balloon with a multi-point access that connects. We get a huge amount of signal, and we push it back down to an air node. An air node then pushes across fiber and offloads.
Gotcha.
So this is what's wonderful about the hybrid network, because cellular is made for very long data, being able to spread really well and meshing fantastic. But Wi-Fi is made for huge amounts of data, but doesn't have the signal, right? So when you combine the two together, all of a sudden, you've got a hybrid mobile network that is capable of connecting lots of people and dealing with lots of data.
Yeah, I got you. So here in the States, when there's a new district, a new area that's being built up, usually they'll run sewage, water, electricity, and of course the cable company will run their fiber optics out there. And of course they'll pay for that because they know later on that people are going to pay for the cable system. So like when we just took a look at that image of those people putting up the solar panels and things you talked about, who's paying for that? I'm going to guess that's through World Mobile.
Whilst we're fine-tuning the sharing economy, it has been World Mobile. So the nodes that we've put up that you'll see on WMT Scan very shortly, they're nodes that have been bought by World Mobile. But now we're transitioning those for adoption by air node operators. Eventually, this stage 3 over the next couple of months will be allowing anybody remotely around the world to own infrastructure and then to pair that with an air node operator in a country. So this is the first time anybody's ever been able to own part of a global mobile network, actually own it. They own the device, they can send the device back to them, but could deploy it into areas that's absolutely needed and where they can make revenue.
So you're creating small business owners, it sounds like.
Yeah, or big business owners. If you wish to buy 1,000 air nodes and propagate them through Tanzania or Kenya or Nigeria or USA or wherever we are, you can. You don't need to have any previous experience. You need to know how to use the web. You need to know how to use a dashboard. And of course, you need to be able to pay for it. Then those nodes are looked after by either yourself, if you wish to do such a thing, and set them up, or you start to rent them out to people who are called air node operators. They maintain them. They provide the location, the real estate to be able to house them. They keep the security, and then you split the revenue that runs through that between yourself and the air node operator. Excellent.
So now we started at the very top. We bring ourselves down. Now talk to us how everything is built on Cardano, World Mobile, and how that all works with this sharing economy.
So the sharing economy is very interesting, namely because two things. Beyond all of the benefits of blockchain, which I won't bore everybody about because we know about this. But as a telecom company, the people who are running the network need to know that they're going to get paid without trust. So they need to be paid automatically. So we have something that's called a proof of service protocol that has certain factors and algorithms that allows us to understand if a node is really doing what it's meant to do. If that node is doing what it's meant to do, it means that Mickey or my administration team or back office team don't have to issue a payment, but actually the payment goes out automatically. So that's one thing. On the other side, in order for there to be explosive growth to cover the half the planet that's unconnected, and it's actually more than half the planet because people are concentrated, one telecom company alone can't do this. So I can go to every VC in the world, I can go to every fund, and I can raise money. But what I can't do is raise enough money in enough time to be able to provide a solution for the unconnected. Now, when you're talking about 3 billion people, you're talking about nearly half the planet. It's a solution that is needed right now. It's not a solution that's needed in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. The people who need the internet the most and want the internet the most don't have access to it. And there's a common denominator here. You don't have access to internet. You don't have access to digital ID. And there's poverty. There's a lack of healthcare. There's a lack of education. So this is why we use blockchain. This is why we use the token. This is why we make it happen like it does. Because that way it leads to explosive growth rather than a centralized body that's dependent on us entirely to grow the network.
Got it. You know what I like about you, Mickey? There's this quote from Albert Einstein, and he says, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. And I like how you make things very simple for me to understand and the people that are listening to this video. So thank you. So now let's get to the next one. So we kind of took a look at what's World Mobile, and then we took a look at, let's actually take a look at what's new. Because I know we had talked about getting this in the hands of the people that need it most. So how are things moving as far as, because we just took a look at Tanzania and that use case. How is everything growing and what's new out there for World Mobile?
We've got a lot of nodes out there now. We have hundreds of nodes, but the only nodes that were showing up on WMT scan are nodes inside the sharing economy. That means they've been fine-tuned. It means they're working inside the sharing economy and make sure that it's working on a centralized Earth node and with our production Air node software. So things are moving super, super fast. We're very happy at the pace. It couldn't have gone faster. I think we're moving faster than any telecom company in history. But that will only tell in the next one or 2 years, because from an outside perspective, people want balloons up now, people want Air nodes up now. But you have to do it right, because if you don't do it right, you can't have this explosive growth. At some point, it kilters and plateaus and then drops off. So you've got to have a point where, okay, World Mobile introduces this, we get the sharing economy right, we lay out the first 20,000 nodes, and then we do the fourth stage of the sharing economy, which is allowing, I've said it online before, Tinder. So I've never used Tinder before, but I'm sure some of the viewers have.
I've heard of it.
With people. So this is what we want to do. We want to be able to have the Tinder for telecoms, where you're able to own and buy a node, and then you're able to find somebody who will take your node and put it on their real estate. So we're one stage before that right now. So this initial stage 3 is allowing people to own the node remotely, but World Mobile is still responsible for making sure that those nodes are put in profitable areas where an ROI can be returned, right? Because ultimately you have to incentivize a business for people to be incentivized to be in that business. So we're growing super fast. You can see it if you land in Zanzibar. The first aerostat is actually going up in the next few weeks. And then we'll be documenting that. I'll be over there. The whole core team will be over there. The engineering teams will be over there. We will have some of the government from Tanzania and Zanzibar that come to open it. And once that aerostat is up, once that payload is there, that very same payloads and replicas of those very same aerostats can now be put into other countries. And that's USA as well, right? 30% of the landmass of USA is unconnected and 10% of the people are unconnected. The big 3 mobile network operators there, I won't name them, but everyone can work out who they are. If you just look online at the fines that they're receiving from the FCC and the threats that they're receiving from the FCC by not utilizing their spectrum, all of a sudden they have a chance to be able to utilize spectrum with our modern infrastructure as opposed to their legacy infrastructure that they can't utilize it with. So they're kind of in a loop. They're stuck in a box. So World Mobile solution in Zanzibar is actually a globally applicable, equitable solution for everywhere else in the world.
I can see it. I can see the vision, and we talked about it. And then, of course, full disclosure, we already talked about this in the beginning before you were on, Mickey. But again, for full disclosure, I am an investor into World Mobile, and I am an Earth node operator, proud to be one. And just so you know, I'm super biased. I don't think anybody can take that away from me. I'm super biased on this channel. If I don't own it, I usually don't talk about it. So that's what's going on. But you brought up a good point in the things that we were talking about, and just to get over these hurdles and just to bring this into the right area at the right time. Let's talk about what are the challenges that you're having right now for adoption, because it's got to be massive, because you can only do so much. You can only raise so much, like you talked about. You can only get things moving. What are the challenges right now to get you to the next level of where you guys want to be?
Honestly, it's about getting the sharing economy right. Once you get the sharing economy right, that's it. It's done. Once you work out the recipe for incentivizing people, for them to run and operate that infrastructure and maintain that infrastructure, that's it. The challenges probably on a business level, the hardest challenges are speaking to regulators and educating them. But we spent the last 4 or 5 years talking about rewriting policies, talking about changing the way that telecoms works. Traditionally, telecom, the genetics, the DNA is not to share, right? Is to sell you a bundle of data that then runs out at the end of the month and doesn't roll over. And then that changed. But that's as close as it's got towards sharing. We come in, we buy the licenses, we buy the spectrum, we buy all the different things that we need. We write our policies, we write our regulations, we write our terms and conditions, and we want you to share. That's the idea. If without sharing, without taking this burden on together, without sharing the rewards and the revenue running from a multi-trillion-dollar industry, this world is not going to be connected. And you've seen it. You see how powerful AT&T are. You see how powerful Google are. You see how powerful Facebook are. They haven't done it. They've tried, right? And the technology is out there. And we believe that it's not just about the tech. Yes, we have patents. Yes, we have incredible technology. Yes, we're working with IOHK. Yes, we're working with some of the best people in the world, and we employ some of the best people in the world. But a big part of it is the sharing economy. Without that, you can't. So that has not really been a challenge. What has been a challenge mostly is spectrum, right? So spectrum is a national resource, is owned by an oligopoly. There's 1,000 mobile network operators in the world. They're sitting on maybe $1 trillion or even $2 trillion worth of spectrum that's unused, and they don't know how to use it. So we have cool techniques and really incredible software and hardware that has anti-interference for spectrum. So walking into a regulator and into a mobile network operator and saying, hey, let us use some of your spectrum. They say, oh, you can't because it's going to interfere and it's going to disrupt and it's going to do this. And we say, no, it's not. So we've done a few tests with a few operators and they've started to see what we've got. And for them, they really do want to use their spectrum. They're just scared that they've never done that before. They've never shared that kind of spectrum. So, I mean, it's happening in the USA. You've got the Helium and Pollen, for example, who are using CBRS, which is an unlicensed spectrum, but that's not happening anywhere else. So, and the problem of the unconnected is not just restricted to the continent of Africa. It's actually global, right? Where I come from in the UK, it's global. Where in the Middle East, when I travel into areas, it's global. When I move into Africa, of course, it's global. But this is a huge problem that everybody wants to fix. So hurdles, none. Hard things, educating people as to how we can do things differently and how we can share.
Gotcha. Yeah, and if we talk about it, people hear about this project and they immediately think of Africa. But even in America, we've got around 343 million people or so. You're looking still like 30 or 40 million people, according to the statistic I read, is that they are inaccessible for telecommunications as well. And that's just in the United States. So think of those numbers globally, and that would lead to, I think, some pretty good growth. I guess that would lead me to my next question, and the last one. What was this interaction with Mark Cuban? I know there was some back and forth, and it seemed very friendly. But it was all really just about education, and I saw this on your feed as you.
I think he went head to head. I didn't go head to head. We saw someone in the community, a really cool person, that came in and opened up a new thread with Mark Cuban after he dissed on Cardano, and then somebody tagged World Mobile, and then he asked what was the differences between World Mobile and Helium. I explained that Helium have 918,000 nodes and are earning around $6.5K a month for their sharing economy, and the World Mobile actually had 40 nodes with an ARPU of $3 per user and around 7,000 customers, which would be 3 times more than the entirely Helium network was doing. He turned around and said, having 2 people on your network with $6 ARPU isn't impressive, tells me nothing. I then posted some screenshots of statistics and WMT scan and some back office stuff. And the next thing that we knew, he was engaging,
which is good.
He tried to poke as he does on Shark Tank, and he's a very clever businessman. There's no doubt about that. But I just came back with really clear facts and educated him. And I hope and I think that he realizes that there is more utility on Cardano than there is on Dodge, as was his first claim. And he rescinded that claim afterwards by saying that Dodge is accepted in more places as a payment mechanism. But I don't think Cardano is a payment mechanism, right? It's a protocol and it's meant to be built upon. So it was an enjoyable interaction. He was pretty cool. The community backed it up and backed me up. And I hope that people got to see I'm fully willing to engage with any critics or any haters out there, as long as the questions are right and they're coming from the right place.
Yeah, look, and of course, people will try to make it more than what it is, but it is really just about education. So if you can get into them and go, look, Mark, and we covered this because there was 2 big things he talked about as far as the bellwether of success, which was fees and transactions. And of course, with fees, that's why he likes Ethereum, because the transaction fees are so high, which is true. Let's be honest, $3, $5, $10 for a transaction fee is pretty lucrative. But is that lucrative for the people all over the world? No, that's a bad deal. That's an awful deal, especially if you're trying to do things at scale. No one is going to accept that moving forward, and that's why they're moving towards the merge. So there was that part, and then we took a look at the transaction fees for Cardano, very low, and probably going to get lower. It was a difference between $3.20, something like that. And then we took a look at transactions and transactions per day, and of course we took a look at it essentially through Masari. And the transactions per day, yes, they were quite high. We're taking a look at transactions on July 31st. He had 1.1 million transactions. Cardano had 91,000 transactions. But then the thing we talked about, which was adjusted transaction volume, because in Cardano you can group together multiple tokens and multiple transactions together in just one and send things over. And this adjusted transaction volume, where they try to remove some type of non-economic transactions back and forth, Ethereum was still pretty high. And let's be honest, 1.5 billion. And that was just in one day on July 31st. But Cardano did have a lot, 7.8 billion. But
you can't use, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
You can't, whether Mark Cuban or anybody else wants to believe or doesn't believe, our chosen blockchain is Cardano. When we connect just 10% of the unconnected users in Kenya and Tanzania, and we're talking 30 million users in unconnected in Tanzania approximately. We're talking about 22 million, 23 million people unconnected in Kenya approximately. You're talking about taking 10% of that. Cardano becomes the biggest blockchain in the world for real world utility. No bots, no rubbish, no AMMs, none of these things.
Yeah.
Whether Mark wants to believe that or not, or anybody wants to believe that, this is real world use, right? So you need to choose a blockchain that actually works, a blockchain that can't be turned off, a blockchain that is fully decentralized, and a blockchain that's going to be suitable for connecting tens of millions of hundreds of millions of users. So yeah, you can see why we're not built on Ethereum, right?
Yeah, and then just to clarify to everybody, it's not like Ethereum is the worst chain or Cardano is the worst chain.
The innovation has come from there. It's incredible. You see how much of the dollar storage is stored on Ethereum. It's incredible, but
huge.
It's not right. It's not built right, and it wasn't built right from the start. And Charles had an advantage, and the IOHK team had an advantage because they saw what was built and they rebuilt it. It's very hard for Ethereum to go back through all those hundreds of thousands of lines of code and restart from the beginning. And they're trying to do that now, and you see how many delays they've got. And sure, they'll get there. I'm very sure.
Sure.
But we can't wait for somebody to get there, just like the unconnected can't wait for another company for 5 or 6 or 7 years to be able to connect them. They're looking for it right now. So Cardano is a solution for right now. It's ever growing. We work with the IOHK team every single day of the week. They're partners with World Mobile. They don't hold any tokens of World Mobile, so there's no conflict of interest at all there. And we're literally working so that we can connect the unconnected and when we can bank the unbanked.
Yeah, and again, it's not about there's one chain to rule them all. I don't really care about that. I'm just trying to get to the end point. And of course, when the tide rolls in, the rising tide lifts all ships. So I'm okay with that. So Micky, you've answered a lot of questions, and I appreciate your time. We're coming to 25 minutes almost. One last question, which is this: what's the absolute outcome for World Mobile? Where do you see you guys in 10 years? What's the ultimate vision of what you want to do?
Connect over 1 billion users, but connectivity is the first point, right? Connect 1 billion users and then watch what happens. Watch how people build on our SDKs, watch how people start to bring traditional finance and DeFi into the space. But connectivity is really everything for us, right? Once the world is connected, then we truly are the global village that the internet is promised to be. Right now, it's not a global village, it's a global village cut almost in half. So every one person on the planet can't speak to the other person on the planet statistically. Not right. So from a human point of view, this is something very important for me to solve and for my team to solve. From a business opportunity, this is one of the biggest business opportunities that's presented itself in history.
I can see it. Telecommunications, connectivity, and creating small and large businesses all in one shot. Micky, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, man. Cheers.
All right, let's jump back. Okay, now I'm not not muted. All right. So that was the interview with Micky. I want to say again, Micky Watkins, thanks again for coming on the show and explaining exactly what World Mobile is and just breaking it down to the basic essentials of what people need to know. And it's one of those things, like when we talked in the beginning, we talked about people who, you know, just they see a good project, like, I don't know if I want to get into it and whatever. I can't tell you what to get into. But I will say this, usually when I've gotten into projects like way down the road and things have already passed me by because all the innovation's already come and gone and I'm a late bloomer, I don't really get into it at the right time. I think there's just sometimes you got to take a look at it and go, okay, I want to get into this. Maybe I should do a lot more research and look heavily more into it and then just get the ball rolling. So that's up to you. And that's it. So again, Micky, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And then as far as the follow-up, I'm going to do a quick Cuban update for this little back and forth exchange between Micky and Mark. And it went like this. This was just from, I think it was yesterday or today. The change in attitude. Of course, Mark was, you know, kind of asking his questions just like he does in Shark Tank. And Micky came back and answered all his questions. And he said, hey, August 10th. What's the date today? 12th? 14th? Wow. He says, now we're making progress. Thank you. Half the price is a great goal, but not necessarily low enough to reach your goal, nor a no-brainer purchase, which makes an interesting study in network costs, marketing, and whether tokens, blockchain add or hurt the proposition to consumers. And Micky shouted back and said, that's great. And then what I want to make mention is this. After the lengthy discussion on how the network nodes work, Watkins signed off the Twitter debate with a friendly and open invitation for further discussion. Boy, I wish there was more of that in the crypto space where someone just says, hey, you know, we disagree, but in all honesty, here's the information I can give you, and there's more if you want it, but here's where I'm coming from. Then someone raises a point, and you raise a point back, and then you either agree to look more into it or just agree to disagree and move on. That's refreshing. Anyhow, that's it for today. So look, I know it was a little bit long, but it was a great interview. I got to say again, thanks, Micky. Now let's jump into a little Q&A. If you got time to stick around. If not, it's Sunday. Get out of here. Do your thing.